So now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator today, Frank Forkin, President of Ipsos's Automotive Client Organization. Frank, you have the floor.
Thanks, Ellen. First, welcome back to all of you who attended our sessions last year. This is our first one of 2021. That. And so first, if you can go to the next slide, John, I just wanted to set them up. So first of all, thank you for taking the time. We've got clients from pretty much all of the states and sometimes even from Europe that attend these sessions. So I wanted to make a couple of things first. Go ahead and move forward with the deck. So I wanted to just set the stage a little bit for this presentation. So unlike last year where we had a virtual conference and we had multiple speakers at one time, we're going to be spreading these out throughout the year. So John and Mike are going to talk about the results of one of the modules from our Ipsos Navigator product, as well as some additional data that they've collected. But what you're going to see this year is, so we have a conversation around autonomous. We're going to have another one on electrification in July, and then the last Navigator module in October on shared mobility. But we're also going to discuss in June, we're actually launching a syndicated study where we're sending mystery shoppers out there and just trying to see how ready dealerships are for those type of customers coming in. So that's going to be really interesting. And then we're also starting what we're calling an electric vehicle social media pulse this year, and we'll be sharing some of the results in September as well. So a lot to come. We'll be doing things. And again, if there's certain things that you as our automotive community would really like to see, it could be bringing in our brand people. It could be bringing in our ethnography people. It could be bringing in someone from another part of the world to talk to you. Let us know, and we'll try to add that to our agenda. So anyway, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike, who's going to start the presentation today around autonomous and not only vehicles, but some of the features. Mike, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Frank. So first off, happy Star Wars Day to all of you that follow that. So given that today's topic is about autonomous and some of the assist features that are available today, I thought we'd just start with setting the situation of what is it like to drive a vehicle. So if we kind of go back to the root of driving a vehicle, it was very basic. And a lot of us learned with a very limited set of controls, a brake, an accelerator, maybe a clutch if we were driving a manual, steering, and then, basic other tools like mirrors and so on and so forth. And we also had to deal with the external information that we were processing while driving. So that was your traffic or weather and road conditions, pedestrians, animals, signage, all of this information was part of our normal process. And then kind of moving forward, what we saw is more features being added in to add comfort. So John, if you can click forward, we saw things that allowed us to adjust seats and adjust the lightings for different modes and of course, more audio controls and HVAC controls. So again, very basic things. But then you also had to account for, as you were driving, John, if you can click forward, the food and drink that we would bring in, right? The beverage, or we stopped to get a meal as we're driving, and of course, passengers. And this was a typical situation. However, more recently, we've added a lot more information coming at the driver, whether it's alerts, warnings, information that is being pushed to us or information that we're pulling in as we want to be actively engaged in certain elements of the vehicle. We've added touch screens and different controls for different features. And so now we've got a lot more going on in the vehicle. Compound that even further, we've added a lot of connected services in the vehicle. So these are actually features and other types of applications that as we're driving, we can tap into, we can leverage, we can use for various purposes. And then on top of that, we have the services of the smartphone, whether we're integrating it into the vehicle or it's actually just environment. So what we have here is really a very complex situation that we're asking today's drivers to manage. This is all inputs and outputs and that they have to be able to react to quickly, but at the same time, we're trying to turn it from a driving environment into a living environment, because so many of us spend so much in the vehicle, our drives are long, and so we want to make that time useful or enjoyable. So go ahead and go forward, John. One of the things we decided was we wanted to talk a little bit more with consumers about what's it like to drive a vehicle today. So we decided to do a poll of 1,000 adults in the U.S. market. This was just done a few weeks ago. And one of the first questions we asked is, what percent of the time do you think you encounter at least one distracted driver, right? And so when we asked that question, what we found is that about 1 out of every 2 drives you take, you believe you've identified somebody who is distracted for some reason, that they're occupied with something other than the task of driving. And if you look at people who drive a fair distance, so John, if you can click forward one. There we go. That of incident goes into roughly 2/3 of our drives. So what this is telling us is that this likelihood of you finding or encountering somebody who is occupied by something other than the task of driving is pretty common today. Go ahead and click forward, John. We asked them too, what have you noticed that they're doing while they're driving? And if you look at this list overall, the bottom part of the list in gray is pretty common. And these are things that we would have expected over the years in the past. They were pretty normal. Some of them were severe, like personal grooming, not such a great idea, or trying to read a newspaper or a map or something of that nature. But some of them were common, talking to people, eating whatever you have, smoking when that was very common as well. But at the top of this list, what we're seeing is the impact that the smartphone is having on today's driver. That's staying connected and staying informed, whether they're talking on the phone or texting or typing with somebody or reading on their smartphone. So what we're seeing is that this device and the interaction with that device in the vehicle has become the most common things that identify us as noticing somebody is distracted. And what's interesting is I've asked this question before in the past years, and these percents are pretty consistent over the last several years, but what was also interesting is we asked people, what are you doing? And they've admitted quite openly that they do these same things. So it's not only are we seeing people distracted, but we ourselves are distracted at pretty much the same rate. So this is something that is just sort of commonplace in today's environment of driving. Okay, go ahead, John. Thank you. So the next thing we asked is, well, okay, given all that, everything you're experiencing, everything you're doing, what you see others doing, how confident are you in your safety on the road? And so we used a 5-point scale, confidence scale, and we summed up the top 2 boxes. And looking at everybody's response, we come up with 37% that are saying they're confident, either extremely or very confident in their ability to manage a vehicle on today's roads. Now, if you click forward and you look at this by gender or by age, yeah, there's a little bit of difference. Men slightly more confident than women, the younger more confident than the elderly. But in all cases, the level of overall confidence isn't that high. This is basically telling us that with today's vehicles, with today's conditions, and all of the things that happen within the vehicle that we can interact with, it has reduced or it has created a low level of confidence in our ability to manage this. Furthermore, when we ask people, well, do you think the OEMs are doing enough to keep you safe from distractions while you're driving? And the response to that has been, for the most part, okay, yes, but about 1/3 of people are saying they're not doing enough. So again, the combination of confidence or lack thereof, and this need for being protected, keeping drivers safe from ourselves, quite honestly, as well as others, there's an opportunity here. And this is where really, if you go to the next slide, this is where these technologies, whether they're a fully autonomous offering or individual ADAS features or a combination creating a semi-autonomous application, even connectivity where you have vehicles talking with each other and talking with the infrastructure, all of these are meant to help the situation of driving to make it easier, to make it safer, and quite honestly, to help build driver confidence. Next slide. Yeah. So given all that, then we have to ask the question, really, the elephant in the room is, do these technologies actually work? Well, there's a recent article published in the Automotive News about a crash, an unfortunate fatal crash of a Tesla owner who was driving and using some of these features, and it ended in a fatality. And the way the story is written, it posed the question, is using these type of technologies the right thing to do, or are we putting ourselves at risk? And again, it made a lot of noise, it made a lot of news, it got a lot of people's attention. But if we kind of look at the data around these technologies and crashes, and John, if you could fast forward one, this is data from Tesla itself, and it's most recently updated in Q1 of 2021. And when autopilot is engaged, so this is their feature that allows the vehicle to take over many of the tasks of driving, does require you still to be engaged in the front seat and be prepared to take over when the technology isn't able to control everything. But when that technology is engaged, the level of accidents per incident, or number of accidents per mile, is one accident every 4.1 million miles driven by Tesla owners. If you click forward one, and we look at those situations where, okay, autopilot wasn't engaged, but the other safety features, the active safety features, a lot of the ADAS features they're offering were engaged, that incident of accidents is now about cut in half to one accident every 2.05 million miles driven. Click forward one more, and still looking at Tesla owners, but now autopilot and the active features were not engaged. So it's basically driving as normal, relying on the driver entirely. And that now the rate of accidents per mile is one every just under a million miles driven. Compare this to NHTSA data, where they're looking at all accidents for all owners. The average is one accident every roughly 500,000 miles driven. So if you kind of look at this objectively, the story aside as it was written and really questioning, do these features, is it smart to use this, or are we putting ourselves at risk, is actually these features can greatly enhance the safety of driving a vehicle. We really can't ignore this data. And what we're going to do today, this is really meant to give you a little bit of context of what we want to talk about in terms of what we've done on autonomous and some semi-autonomous features, and how consumers are accepting or engaging with that moving forward. And keep in mind that there is a true safety element here that I think, as you see John's story, we're just not talking about enough. So I'm going to turn the conversation over to John to continue on.
Great. Thanks, Mike. No, I appreciate it. And the main thing we wanted to build on is, again, is these consumers' perceptions when they give us our ratings and give us some insight, understanding this overarching what's happening in the market. So what Mike has, portrayed, this idea of distracted drivers, what's happening out there in the market. And that's what's leading to, unfortunately, with accidents. Why do accidents happen? You would argue it's that of a distracted driver. And so ultimately, how do we improve that? So with that understanding, let's talk about like the consumer. So how we've done this is we've been monitoring what's been disrupting the auto and mobility industry for the last 5 years or so, and we break this up into 3 core subjects. Today we're talking about autonomous and the advanced features, ADAS features, to understand some of the perceptions, what's transpiring, what's happening in the market, the acceptance of that, and what's going to drive that acceptance. Just to give a little more context, who are these people? We do this globally. It is amongst new vehicle owners, and it's fairly robust. So we have thousands of completes. We have a slight increase in the US. We have 2,000 completes there, but then we have China, Japan, Brazil, and Germany represented. We do get what we call demographically balanced, mix of ages and gender, location where they live, how many vehicles they have in the household, and children, to give, like I say, a rep sample, if you will, per country. But we also, what becomes important here for this module is this idea is, what is the level of experience with semi-autonomous? And we'll get into this further. And what we see is about a quarter of our sample, our global sample, has driven or ridden in a vehicle. Not that they own it, but they've experienced it. Well, and that becomes more important as we talk about our story. So with that, we'll dive in to our context of our interpretation. When we talk about autonomous starting out in the auto industry is a big word, right? It's something that it can mean many different things to different people. So it was very important for us to ground our respondents or consumers we're talking to. What do we mean by that? So we phrased it as autonomous mode, and it's this idea that it has the vehicle is doing the driving functions, whether it's doing steering or turning, braking, accelerating, it has that functionality and it's happening automatically. In addition, that is handling all road conditions, all environmental conditions. And you would say, well, that's not happening today. That doesn't exist today. We recognize that, right? There are semi-autonomous, but we're saying is this vision of autonomous, what is a consumer's interest level with this as defined? So we're as clear as possible. When we do that, we compare our data, and we've been doing it, like I say, for the last few years. I'm just highlighting the last 3 years. We're looking at here is from 2019 through this year in 2021. And our key regions, and we're asking what is the autonomous interest on a 5-point scale. We're looking at top 2 box. And what are we seeing here? We're seeing that autonomous driving is maintaining an interest and or increasing. We're seeing it's increasing more here for developed countries, that being like the US and Germany, whereas China and Brazil is more, I guess I would say, constant or maintaining. And their overall interest is higher. We have seen this across what we've been monitoring over the last few years. These emerging markets are more interested in the new technologies, inclusive of like electrification and some of the shared services, but nevertheless, that's what we're seeing is their interest level is pretty high, so it's actually hard to see additional gains. But nevertheless, we are seeing this autonomous interest increasing or maintaining. But then as we dig in a little further, this idea of semi-autonomous, we want to understand is what is consumers' experience with semi-autonomous. Again, we're defining it as driven or ridden in the vehicle. Not that they've talked about it, not that they've heard it on the news, this idea of they've driven and ridden in this experience. And we're seeing is continued increase in level of experience transpiring in our key markets. Again, we're seeing a little bit more in the developed markets, but nevertheless, we are seeing this increase continue, and that's actually good news. And why would we say that's good news? When we focus in on the US, specifically, we look at those people who have had experience, they've driven or ridden in a semi-autonomous, and then asked the question and looked at the data, how interested are they in an autonomous driving vehicle if they've ridden or driven it? We see the interest level is 3x for those who have an experience, and that's continued to increase. That's even gained from last year. And the idea here is once you see, feel, experience all of that of what the vehicle is capable of doing rather than what it's promised to do, that's where it makes a difference. And that's definitely very important, and it's advantageous to get that experience because it will increase the level of acceptance and the acceptability of it specifically. Then the one thing is this idea of experiencing it. What do they mean by that? We wanted to get some richer data. What does that mean? So we just asked a simple question, how have you experienced semi-autonomous? And in the words of the consumer, what are they talking about? So we have some verbatims here, and we did a simple word cloud so you can see some of the data that we have. And ultimately, it's about the utilization of ADAS features in combination. We're not surprised to see Tesla being mentioned, so we put that there, is that they've actually driven in one with a friend. But then also this idea of ADAS functionality working together to enable this semi-autonomous is what's transpiring in the market. And I know I've experienced, I'm traveling these days, which I'm grateful for, and I'm simple rental car, late model vehicle, I'm renting, I'm at a parking lot at Target picking up some product, and I go to back up and the cross traffic alert is signaled, and it illustrates very clearly that it caused me me to stop, to brake, because it alerted me, and that prevented an accident. So it's that idea of these semi-autonomous ideas. Granted, that was just one simple illustration of ADAS, but ultimately it does reduce the incidence of accidents that are happening in the market. And it's just powerful. And it's just a matter of us to, as an industry, emphasizing of these safety enhancements that these really deploy. And it can't be said enough is what I would say. But, and so then I would say is it's not necessarily converting to purchase consideration with autonomous right now. So basically what we're finding is even though we inherently know these are safety benefits out there, we inherently know that autonomous could perhaps provides, I guess, reducing of accidents in the market. But when we talk about do people want an autonomous vehicle, we're still seeing not huge growth. It's still what I would call niche. It's about, a quarter of the US consumers are saying that they want a vehicle with autonomous mode. But the question is how do we get more to convert? How do we broaden it? And it's a matter of looking at these people, of the people who are interested. Why are they interested? We have some agreeability statements to get us understanding of who they are. And we have top 2-box agreeability amongst the people who say they would consider. We see the majority of them, 3/4 of them are indicating this idea of comfort, relaxation. I mean, they're indicating elements that are higher order need states, if you will, just understand it, but it's a matter of they're not highlighting this aspect necessarily as their top benefit about safety. They're this higher level. I mean, they mentioned some safety, but the people who are adopting it they trust it, they are adopting it, but it's a matter of how do we go further? And if we understand of the current likely autonomous consider, it's as what we would expect. It's those idea of the early adopters. They are, they tend to be younger. They tend to be in urban areas. They tend to be male. They tend to be commuting. They trust the ADAS. They do value the safety. So it's that inherent, they've bought in, and they've also experienced the semi-autonomous. So they're basically saying is, yes, we understand the benefits. We understand what it's doing for me. It's working, but we have to go further than this early adopter profile to get that adoption. And what can we do about that? How do we do that? And that's where if we look at the people who wouldn't consider, it's roughly 2/3 of the market are non-considerers. Again, we're looking here at the US. Again, it's the same agreeability statements. And it's what's being said. We're seeing 9 out of 10 consumers wouldn't consider because they would want the control of driving themselves, and they're concerned about the safety. They're not convinced of the safety benefits. So the element there is we really need to tout the safety. We need to improve upon that to get that brought in because it's there. We saw it in the stats that Mike shared, and it's a matter of saying, how do we get that more into the forefront about how to improve this safety? I just bring it back to the basic needs. I think we've all seen this, the Maslow hierarchy of needs, and the basic needs. It's there at the bottom of safety. If we can address the safety elements, you can speak to the soul of these consumers that this is what we are addressing with this. Yes, we've seen communication about the ultimate end goal of this nice to have relaxation and comfort, but you only can get there if you believe in the safety. And we don't have enough people believing in that safety element that is being provided with the semi-autonomous functionality. So we just say, definitely focus on the safety benefit, continue to focus on it so that we get the news articles about the safety benefits. And I know that may not be sexy out on the marketplace, but the element is there. It is true. It is reducing accidents and the fact that it's enabling us to be an engaged driver rather than a disengaged or a distracted driver. And I do believe by focus on this will help and enable the autonomous to take the lead in the car wars race, as you say. But how else can we further do that? We ask a simple question is if there's no price premium, what would you prefer? We have manually driven, semi-autonomous, selectable autonomous, or fully autonomous. The majority of people again, want the control. They want semi or selectable autonomous. Selectable autonomous is the vehicle is capable of handling all the road conditions, but you have the control when you deploy it. And again, it's this idea of give me confidence, give me the control, give it to me where I can deploy it, because I know it may not be appropriate in all conditions. And if it's just best for me to handle it, this area, I'll do it. I'll drive myself. So that element, it just illustrates that there is a place for this. It should be in the marketplace. It should be being pushed out, but it's, again, giving the control, give the confidence to the consumer. And we ask the question is, okay, when do we think full autonomous, as we've been describing it, will be, out in the marketplace on all roads, environmental condition? We're still saying 2/3, 10 years out. It's trending. It continues to be this reachable targets. It's 10 years out. It's always 10 years out. That's what we see from 2020 to 2021. It's a matter of how do we break that cycle? To me, it's about emphasizing of the safety benefits to help pull that in so that we can get that here sooner, so that we can realize that quicker for us consumers. Couple for the highlights, and where we've gotten some more richness, is some feature evaluation as well within this module. And this idea is which features, advanced features, people are most interested in. How do they rate them? In detail. So we've done 12 different features. 14 different features to be able to look at this in more detail. And we've been tracking a few of these over time for a while now. That's the autonomous, but we've added a couple of new ones. But what we have the ability to look at is understanding is what is the ranking and interest level of these features. Look at it by country, different age groups, different cuts of the data, again, of people who've been experienced that are not experienced. We have then scorecarding capability of these different features and functionality. But the highlight here is taking a look at how these things were rated. We're looking at what is the interest level of these features by the awareness. This is something we've done new this year to help us illuminate what's happening here in the story. And first off is the top features that are out there. This idea of interest have a clear safety benefit. Accident avoidance, advanced driver assist systems, emergency service, they just inherently in the name of safety. But of course, some of the context that we provided, it's about a clear safety benefit. But something that's emerged as well as the next interest level is some convenience benefits. But they're rated a little lower in interest. There are some things here, but they just don't have a proven safety benefit. Some of the things such as like a digital assistant, that's the voice activated aspect. Vehicle situation awareness is a new feature we evaluated this year. This idea of the vehicle communicating to you as the driver what the vehicle sees. Having that gives confidence, insight, confirmation that what you are seeing is what the vehicle's seeing. Having that confirmation is definitely beneficial. There is some safety in it. It's just not proven safety is the way I would say it. And then the last one I would highlight is while we see and have awareness of autonomous and semi-autonomous out there, that's not necessarily correlating to interest yet because of that aspect of the unproven safety benefit. So it's a matter of working on that to improve it, to again enhance it. We asked some more richness and some verbatims of people who are interested in these features. We just asked, why are you interested in it? And again, we're not surprised, but it does confirmational safety. It's why do I want accident avoidance? It's about safety. Safety is important. Avoiding of accidents is the biggest thing. Again, it gets back to that distracted driver idea. How do we operate in this place? It's everly more complicated for that driver. Help them. Assist them. And I believe all of these features working together will put us down in that continuum of improving of the safety and engagement. So a couple of the key highlights that I have here as relates to our takeaways is that driver distraction is getting worse. Features that enhance getting that driver attention and improve safety is critical. We have our safety paradigm we've worked in with. This has been in existence of this idea of crash protection. Then we've graduated to crash prevention. That's what some of the ADAS features, and then this idea of increased security and safety of the connected car features. But by having the marketing teams of our OEMs focusing on talking about these driver monitoring features in conjunction with the safety benefit to be able to provide these alerts in an intuitive fashion is definitely going to be advantageous to enhance that experience and then increase the attention of that driver because they're distracted and it's very disruptive, and we need to cut through that clutter because it's getting more and more complicated. So by having these driver assist features focus on improved safety and crash prevention, and then linking it to saying this is just the beginning of that semi-autonomous, and linking that story together in a continuous fashion is definitely going to be advantageous on improving that engagement of that distracted driver so that we can avoid these accidents on the market or out in the market. So again, I would say key takeaways: autonomous appeal is maintained, but there are ways to broaden our acceptance and accelerate the adoption. It's about trials, getting that experience out there, getting people to try it, and they can see how powerful it is by just experiencing it. If we saw with my data earlier, people who have experienced it, they are more interested. We also say, again, focus on the safety benefits of that, and this aspect of utilizing in a positive term, semi-autonomous, that will help prevent accidents. I say incorporate it with also the driver state monitoring so that you can understand if they are distracted, if they're looking at their phone, have like a vibration, have an alert in the vehicle so that it triggers them to engage because of the situation that's happening. And then this also, we would say, is giving full control. Allow the driver the ability to deploy the semi-autonomous on different road conditions and it be more or less selectable, and then having that full power, that would be advantageous. And then that any type of conformational thing that I was mentioning with the vehicle monitoring awareness insight, that gives that confirmation to the driver that the vehicle is seeing what I'm seeing. Those types of features and enhancement we saw is definitely beneficial. Again, improving of the confidence and giving of the control of to that driver. Then highlight, I know all this data is being pulled from the Navigator. Again, there's some key data and reasons. I know we do a lot more analysis and interpretation for our clients, but it is something to know that this is a great resource. 5 countries, give you a lot of perspective. It gives you some in-depth learning. I've just done a couple of tidbits from the US market, but it helps you understand why somebody would adopt this technology depending upon what the module is. And right, we just focused on autonomous and some of these driver assist features, but just a lot to learn, a lot further to learn, if you will, if you are interested, just let me know, and then we have more content coming later in the year. So with that, I would hand it over to Frank. I don't know if any questions have come through. If
let me
happy to answer any questions that may have come through. But anyway, thank you. Go ahead, Frank.
A few questions. So first of all, for those of you who have not, so many of our clients have already subscribed to this report, and just so it's always that balance of how much we share publicly, and because obviously there's value in the report itself. But I can tell you the customers that do buy find a lot more value in the details. And one of the things that John does for each of our clients is he basically creates a custom presentation, invites their internal clients in. Sometimes it's 30, 40 people, again, across the globe, where he may go into one country or just talk about the U.S., but something I know that we're a lot of value. And then there's just a history of kind of watching things change over the last 5 years and what we've seen. So that aside, there is a couple of things that I'd like for you to comment on, and this is both John and Mike. Is around so we have the emergence of electric vehicles and obviously the instrument cluster. Things are changing. What's your opinion from a distraction standpoint and tied to these autonomous features of is there opportunities for the industry as the emergence of EVs happening to maybe deal with some of the distraction issues?
And I would think so, but I'll go ahead, Mike, give you an opportunity since I've just done a lot of talking.
Yeah, so obviously, Tesla's been at the forefront of EVs as well as a lot of these technologies. The nice thing about these technologies is that they're leveraging a lot of the systems or the safeguards, the sensors that are in place, but now bringing it to the forefront of the customer's attention, right? And I'm just going to go back to whether this is an EV or another product. These vehicles today have all sort of advanced to a level where they can include and contribute to these types of systems working to protect us. and in every level of vehicle. And EV is one example, but it's really no exceptions. I don't make a distinction between EV and the others in this case. The amount of interactions that we have in vehicles today, the amount of activity as drivers that we can engage in outside of the driving has gotten to the point where it's created distraction. It's created a feeling of anxiety or overwhelming at times. If road conditions get poor, we start to feel overwhelmed. And that's where these features can really come in and create some peace of mind, some ease. They can assist us in that process. They can let us know. And I think whether you're driving an EV or whether you're driving a traditional vehicle, this has a great place in our industry today. People don't want to give up the ability to make our drives, but we also want to feel confident and safe. And I think that's the part we're missing on. These technologies deliver the safety, but we're not communicating that value well enough to get people to want to engage or to really adopt. And I think that's the real issue here. We need to build confidence. These features create safer environments, but it's not being communicated effectively. And it does allow for us to stay engaged in some of these other interactions, but still stay safe.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Mike. John, anything else to add before we close?
No, I think that I would say that covers it, and it's just that just to emphasize enough, just trying it, and especially what you talked about EVs. This idea is because there's a lot of new interfaces and displays, and anything of those new interfaces and displays that can be conformational and to help improve driver engagement so they're not distracted is an opportunity to make it better, right? That's how I would say about that. But yeah, no, but we appreciate it. So.
Yep. And so just to kind of close, for those of you who, many of you have been on these previous presentations and you guys kind of know the drill from a standpoint of the ability to get the recording and the presentation, we encourage you to pass it on internally if you feel there's somebody that could benefit, as well as just pointing someone to the recording. I think it'll be available shortly and you guys will get a notification of that. And again, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Next month, as we talked about, we'll be talking about electric vehicles at the dealership, and our salespeople really prepared. And if so, what maybe, I guess, best practices that we could potentially share. So with that, I'll turn over to Ellen to close. And again, thanks for everyone's time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Wow, that was really great. Thank you, John, Mike, and Frank, for today's presentation. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. As Frank pointed out, you will be receiving an email with a direct link to today's recorded presentation. And even prior to that, we welcome the opportunity to speak with you. So please reach out to us directly. The information, the contact information is right there in front of you. That now concludes today's webinar. Have a wonderful day.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.